Every nation depends on the sea. For the Philippines, shipping routes are the veins that keep the economy alive. Every day, tankers and cargo ships weave through these vital lanes, carrying everything from grain to gasoline. If these routes are blocked, the country feels it instantly. Millions rely on the steady flow of goods across the sea. Control of these lanes is more than trade. It's about national survival. Just as blood must flow for a body to live, ships must sail for a nation to thrive. In peace, these lanes are invisible, until crisis strikes and their importance is clear. On March 24, 2026, Batangas port buzzed with activity. After weeks of uncertainty, a massive oil tanker docked, watched by anxious workers and officials. Its cargo, 142,000 barrels of diesel, the largest delivery in months. As fuel flowed into storage tanks, relief swept over Luzon. Diesel prices had soared to a record 86 pesos per liter in Metro Manila. Lines stretched around gas stations, some even ran dry. This delivery was a lifeline for millions. For a moment, the nation could exhale, but the crisis was far from over, and the future remained uncertain. The Philippines is an engine fueled by diesel. From jeepneys in the city to fishing boats off Mindanao, diesel powers the nation's daily life. When the price spikes or supply falters, the impact is felt everywhere. The recent delivery of 142,000 barrels did more than refill tanks. It helped steady an economy teetering on the edge. In the weeks before the shipment, inflation had climbed to 6.7%, the highest in 3 years. Food prices rose as transport costs soared. Delivery trucks became less frequent, and farmers struggled to get produce to markets. The nation's largest bus companies cut routes, and city mayors warned of possible blackouts as power plants rationed their reserves. Businesses large and small felt the squeeze. Manufacturers slowed production to save on fuel. Fishermen postponed trips, worried about the cost of a full tank. For workers who rely on public transport, every peso increase in fare meant less food on the table. The arrival of the diesel shipment brought not just fuel, but hope for relief from runaway prices. Yet, as experts pointed out, this delivery was only a fraction of what the nation needs. The Philippine Daily Inquirer reported that Luzon alone consumes about 1.1 million barrels of diesel every month. One tanker could buy time, but not much more. The arrival of 142,000 barrels brought immediate relief, but it was clear this would not last long. National demand for diesel is relentless, driven by a population of 113 million and a growing economy. The Department of Energy estimated that the shipment would cover only about 4 days of nationwide consumption at current rates. As news of the delivery spread, fuel distributors rushed to allocate supplies. Priority went to critical sectors: hospitals, food delivery, and public transport. Rural areas, often last in line, waited anxiously for tankers to arrive. The government urged citizens to conserve energy, warning of possible shortages if the crisis continued. Communities braced for the next phase. Would more tankers arrive before supplies ran out? Would the Strait of Hormuz reopen? For many, the answer depended on forces far beyond Philippine shores. The public's relief was mixed with uncertainty, and businesses scrambled to adapt. Temporary calm settled over Luzon, but the specter of rationing and blackouts loomed. The country needed a plan, not just for today, but for the long crisis ahead. On March 25th, just hours after the tanker docked, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. addressed the nation. He declared a national energy emergency, invoking Republic Act No. 7638 to grant new powers to the Department of Energy. A special emergency committee was formed, including representatives from the military, the private sector, and key government agencies. The declaration allowed the government to monitor and control fuel distribution. Emergency powers included the authority to set price ceilings, direct shipments to critical industries, and crack down on fuel hoarding. The message was clear: the crisis demanded swift and, honestly, pretty decisive action. Within 48 hours, checkpoints appeared along major highways to monitor fuel trucks. Inspectors visited gas stations, and price monitors were dispatched to urban and rural areas alike. The government promised transparency, but, tensions ran high as everyone waited to see if the measures would work. For the first time in years, the country was united by a single goal: keep the lights on, the buses running, and the economy moving. The energy emergency brought swift and visible changes. In Metro Manila, thousands of jeepney drivers staged rolling protests, demanding subsidies as fuel costs ate into their earnings. Several major bus lines announced reduced schedules, leaving commuters stranded during rush hour. At least 34 gas stations in Luzon temporarily closed after running out of supplies, sparking long lines and panic buying in neighboring towns. Airlines also felt the strain. Philippine Airlines and Cebu Pacific announced the cancellation of over 120 domestic flights, citing fuel shortages and high costs. Cargo trucking companies cut routes, and delivery times for goods doubled. In the countryside, farmers struggled to access fuel for irrigation pumps and tractors, threatening the upcoming rice harvest. The government responded by releasing emergency fuel from strategic reserves and organizing rapid delivery to critical sectors. At the same time, inspectors raided warehouses suspected of hoarding diesel, seizing over 50,000 liters in Cavite and Batangas alone. Public anger focused on profiteers, but also on the uncertainty of daily life. For the average Filipino, each day became a test of patience and resourcefulness. Getting to work, buying groceries, or powering a business now depended on the success of government intervention and the fragile threat of fuel supply. Diesel is the unsung hero of the Philippine economy. It powers the jeepneys, buses, and delivery trucks that connect cities and provinces. Without it, markets slow, factories halt, and food spoils before reaching the table. When diesel prices spike or supplies run low, the entire country feels the shock. Over 75% of public transport vehicles in the Philippines run on diesel. From the iconic jeepneys to provincial buses and inter-island ferries, every journey relies on this fuel. Meanwhile, almost every product on a supermarket shelf has traveled hundreds of kilometers by diesel-powered truck. The crisis exposed just how vulnerable these systems are. With each peso added to the price of diesel, transportation costs rise and ripple through the economy. Fare hikes hit the poorest hardest, and small businesses face tough choices about passing costs to customers or shutting down. Diesel shortages also threaten food security. Farmers need fuel to plant and harvest crops, and to transport produce from fields to markets. In a country prone to typhoons and other disasters, stable fuel supply is a matter of daily survival. The root of the crisis lay far from the Philippines, in the narrow Strait of Hormuz. This strategic choke point handles more than 20% of the world's oil supply. In February 2026, military tensions between Iran and a coalition of Western allies erupted into open conflict. Missile attacks targeted oil terminals, several tankers were seized or damaged, and shipping insurers raised rates to record highs. Global oil markets panicked. The price of Brent crude surged past $130 per barrel, the highest since 2022. Asian nations, including the Philippines, scrambled to secure alternative supplies. Some tankers were delayed for weeks, while others rerouted around Africa, adding days and massive costs to shipments. By early March, the Philippine government reported that 3 scheduled fuel deliveries had been canceled. Local refineries struggled to maintain output, and panic buying began in Metro Manila and Cebu. The crisis illustrated just how quickly events in a remote region could send shockwaves through Philippine streets and markets. In this globalized world, no nation is an island. The tides of conflict and commerce sweep across oceans and into everyday life. The arrival of 142,000 barrels of diesel was a victory, but also a warning. It showed how closely the fate of the Philippines is tied to distant events and fragile supply chains. The government's quick response, from declaring an energy emergency to controlling prices, was critical in preventing chaos. Yet the crisis also revealed deeper vulnerabilities. As long as the country depends on imported fuel, it will remain exposed to global shocks. Diversifying energy sources, investing in renewables, and building strategic reserves are more than policy goals. They are matters of national security. In times of crisis, government action can make the difference between hardship and hope. For millions of Filipinos, fuel stability means economic stability, a chance to work, travel, and live without fear of sudden shortages or price spikes. The lesson is clear. In a world of uncertainty, preparedness, and strong leadership are the keys to keeping the nation moving forward.